if you want to experience growth in any part of your life, whether it's your physique or your relationship with your partner, guess what you got to do? You got to get uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And that's the thing that you can rely on being consistent if you want to get through seasons of life, whether you're puppy dogs and love in college or you're navigating parenthood or retirement later on, whatever it may be. How uncomfortable are you willing to get with your partner?
Sugar Daddy Podcast, yo. Learn how to make them pockets grow. Financial freedom's where we go. Smart investments, money flow.
Hey, babe, what are we talking about today?
Today, we are going on a double date. And I'm so excited because if you have been listening, you know Brandon and I are the weird ones, and all we do is talk about relationships and money. And guess what? We found another couple who likes talking about relationships and money. And so we said, you know what? Let's make it a double date. And it just so happens that they wrote a fabulous new book called Money Together. They beat us to it, which I'm not very competitive. We are here to celebrate them and their book launch of Money Together. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So Heather and Douglas Bonaparte, welcome to the Sugar Daddy Podcast.
Thank you so much for having us. And I'm pretty sure that we will know by the end of this that we are the weird ones.
Listen, we are
Challenge accepted.
Which accepted, guys.
we are here to be weird together and to normalize the conversations around money in partnership, because we know it's still very taboo. We know it's still one of the leading causes of divorce. And so resources like Money Together are there to help guide people to make it less weird, to make it less taboo, and to really bring it into everyday conversation, because that's really what you need. It's not a one-time thing. It
Yeah.
really is an ongoing, maybe it doesn't have to be daily because that sounds stressful, but an ongoing conversation in people's relationships. So we're excited to get into this today.
Wait,
And
let's go there.
I love, too, that the subtitle of the book is How to Find Fairness in Your Relationship and Become an Unstoppable Financial Team. And I love the word fair because we know equal is not a thing in relationships. And Eve Rodsky, who is on the back of your book, I'm pretty sure, we've had her
Sure is.
on as well. And so we know all about fairness and equity and how hard it is to achieve. So we're so excited to get into this. We're going to get into your bios because even though this is about money together, you are individuals and you have your own stories that you're now merging. And so we want to make sure that everybody understands who you are and what you've done and how this has all come together. So let's get into it. Douglas Bonaparte is the founder of Bonafide Wealth, a wealth management firm in New York City. Recognized as one of the nation's most influential financial advisors, Douglas serves on the advisory councils for CNBC and Investopedia. He has been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and more. He is also a CFP board ambassador for New York. When he's not making jokes on the internet, he enjoys brewing coffee, though he can do both at the same time. I love that. Heather Bonaparte is used to wearing many hats, as most women do. On her first maternity leave, because there's apparently nothing else to do on maternity leave, she co-authored the couple's first book on helping millennials achieve financial freedom. I mean, could you not have just sat on the couch and rested with just some baby spit on your shoulder or something?
When you look back, none of it makes sense. Jessica.
1 point on the weird
Weird
scale
check.
right there. Check. Okay. Since then, she has become a rising voice at the intersection of love, money, and family. She has written for CNBC, The Skim, Insider, Scary Mommy, and more. A lawyer by trade, she spent more than a decade in the insurance industry before joining the family business as Bonafide Wealth's Director of Business and Legal Affairs. They met in college and consider themselves Gators for life. That's for Heather and Douglas. And they live in New Jersey with their 2 daughters. So, whew, y'all been busy.
It's a lot going on.
It's a
There's a lot to
going
unpack.
on. Yes.
When vacation?
Yeah, when are we going
When-
on vacation?
I mean, come with us. Come with us. We'll be gone next week. We're so excited to get into this because I think there's so much even in those bios that is going to, I know, go into this story of money together and the
You
fact
know
that
it.
you are working in this business now together, but had very separate lives before. But before we can do all of that, we need to hear about your money memories. And then we're going to let the conversation flow. So I'm going to do ladies first. So, Heather, what is your first money memory?
Well, do you want to know something interesting? Even though we asked this
Always.
question to every couple that we interviewed for our book, there was a memory that I unlocked in the process of writing this book and
Okay.
reading it and editing it that I realized had a much more profound impact on my view of money and the world than what I had originally considered my first money memory to be. And I was in a car with my father's parents and my grandfather, my late grandfather, when I was about 7 or 8 years old, maybe 8 or 9. And I we saw a homeless person on the street, and I wanted to stop the car and give them money
Hmm.
and food. And he screamed at me. And it was we had got into a big fight about what generosity means and personal responsibility means. And it was so jarring for me as a young child with a generous heart and with a belief about people and things and how you find yourself in different lots in life. And it just was it was the perfect illustration of how differently I viewed the world. And I always viewed the world than my late grandfather, who had very different views than me. And
Mm.
those views, those diametrically opposite views in our family, um, were a real source of internal conflict for me as I got older. So it's one of those things where we look back and my mom remembers it and my dad remembers it too. They're no longer married, but at the time they were. And they remember it. They're like, oh, yeah, we remember that day and how Pop screamed at you. He pulled the car over and you were devastated. And so it's sorry to start us off on such a heavy note.
Dang, huh?
That's my
No.
first money memory. And you read in our book
Mm-hmm.
about all of my issues and baggage with money and where they come from.
Yeah.
Here's the start.
Starting
So
point A. Yeah. But though that's so well, it's devastating, I think. And clearly it has stuck with you. And I think in families, when you have such opposite views on life and generosity and love and giving and all those things and empathy, I mean, that's when you're like, you know what? This is why people build their chosen family. And,
that's right.
yeah.
That's right. And you know what's interesting? To this day, when we unpack what our values are, Doug and I still are both, we are both generous people. We're both philanthropic people. But the way that I feel about giving and giving as an obligation, as part of a tenet of what I believe and who I am
Mm,
and my values, and like what I look at the purpose of having wealth is and about, right? Like how important is that to me? And I
mm.
realized like I did not connect that until very recently, that like maybe this is why this is so important to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, now it's at your core, right?
Yeah.
The core of your being. Thank you for
Yep.
sharing that. Douglas with the good hair.
Sure does.
Um, I mean, my
I'm
goodness.
jealous, so
Yeah, over here I've got Baldy, so
I
Looks
funny
good.
quick side note, the funniest part is that we actually found you guys separately. So like
yeah,
I've been following Douglas for a while on the financial advising side, and I even remember when like your logo was like the outline of your head.
it was so
Yeah.
good. As it should be.
Yeah,
As
it's
it
not
should be.
that's not narcissistic or anything. But, hey,
If you got it, flaunt
flaunt it
it.
if you got it,
It's
right?
right. That's right. All right, Douglas, what is your first money memory?
Yeah, so stark contrast to Heather here.
Yeah.
I grew up the son of serial entrepreneurs. My grandfather and my father were in business together, business separately. We were always encouraged to be fascinated by money, not just because it's money, but because what it could do for you, right? There were a lot of qualities around it. This notion that if you, bet on yourself and were resourceful enough that you could produce money, you could make things happen, right? Like my grandpa Shep, he was a mover and a shaker, he was always, networking and bopping around and making stuff happen here. And I'd learn a lot later on, like what that meant for growing businesses and enterprise and things like management. So from a very early age, my brother and I were fixing computers and making little businesses. And these little businesses meant we never had to work, at too many, places our friends were working at. We were capable of doing it ourselves. So we got a lot of lessons there, just in, again, investing in yourself and being able to produce. That's served me quite well, throughout life. And that I probably could never work for somebody, is I guess the downstroke to that. Yeah, Heather, who's
So
been in all,
we would joke so much, like in my like decade plus as a corporate
yeah,
girly.
big
We
corporation.
always joked about Doug having like what do you call it, like CEO mentality.
Yes,
He's like,
yeah.
just walk in there and tell them what you want.
I don't care
And
what
I'm
level
like,
in the organization you want, from mailroom to, SVP. You just gotta,
mentality. I'm like, you've never
yeah.
Yeah,
worked for anyone.
right. There's so
Clearly,
many
this will get
politics, it doesn't work like that.
this will get you fired very fast. So
Right.
I hope no one's taking this advice. And that's kind of the joke here. And we also joked about, I'd be fired very quickly. Like
Mhm.
I did not really understand why you couldn't go above your boss if they were like doing something that was just operationally inefficient. Yeah, that'll kind of get you in
It's
trouble
frowned
there. So
upon, yeah.
so for so for me, I had a really good foundation. It's not all rose-colored glasses. There are moments that I look back on where I remember my grandfather pointing his finger at me, as my dad and him were having a conversation. And he said, "This one over here doesn't know the value of a dollar." And like I didn't really know what it meant at the time, but I knew it was bad, and I knew I didn't want to be, that person looking up from my Game Boy, like, well, what'd you say? Like, why is this a bad thing? But it kind of folded back into this curiosity I have about just building business. And I also had an older brother that was into it too. So him and I got to kind of workshop ideas. And I give my older brother David a ton of credit for being the one to actually take a lot of leaps and go out there and be entrepreneurial. And as his kid brother, bring it up the rear and inherit a lot of the work that he did. So
Mhm.
thanks to all of them for that.
Yeah. Those are great stories. I love kind of the how separate they are. We always find that when people tell us their first money memory and now they're in a partnership, most of the time people did not grow up the same way with
That's right.
money.
Absolutely.
Even if they grew up, in similar socioeconomic statuses or levels, if they are both college educated, like it doesn't really matter. It's that most people that come together and get married grew up very different when it comes to money. Is that your experience as well? Like, would you say you guys grew up very differently?
Yes, yes. Socioeconomically, no. But yes, in the sense that my parents actually, so I'm an only child and grandchild on both sides of my family.
Oh.
Which is, I think that plays into a lot of the money baggage that I carried into adulthood. Because my parents got divorced when I was 13, and so, like I said, like I was growing up in a situation where I've got basically now two families with two very, very different approaches to money, two very, very different views of things like generosity, identity, values, and I was kind of put in the middle of those two things. And I lived with my mother, who was very afraid, and she was a stay-at-home mom for many, many years and had to go reinvent herself and find her career. But it was like this scarcity moment in the day-to-day of my life. And then I have my father's family, where money was like, money's a means of control. It's about buying loyalty. It's about being like very exacting with your wealth, and about like it's the opposite. And I think when Doug and I found ourselves together, like he's coming from the standpoint of stability,
Yeah.
and like you can bet on yourself and you can make things happen, and
Abundance mentality.
more of an abundance mentality. And I was just so incredibly emotional about money because I really just didn't know what to believe coming into adulthood.
Hmm.
And so
I feel like God very much intermixed with the personal relationships that you had with, people in your life. And those blurry lines created all kinds of things that you would have to navigate through.
Created all sorts of issues in the early years of our relationships because what I took to adulthood was this idea that to give money was to show you love someone, and to
Mm.
withhold money was to show that you disapprove or that they are not enough.
Yeah.
Because the money was there and the choice to not share it with you was a statement about your lack of something. And that was always put on me. So
Mm.
imagine going into a relationship at
That's a
where
lot.
you're kind of like even your family is kind of putting you to the test as to where your loyalties are and who to
Mhm.
trust and things like that. It was really difficult. I feel bad for him.
I
It
mean,
seems like you came out on the other side and learned a lot in the process, though.
luckily I'm built for it. I think in many cases, whether that's luck or just a lot of the reasons that Heather and I work, despite being almost opposites in every possible category you can imagine, but the expression goes opposites attract because you're filling in pieces of your partner that maybe they're not coming up well, and their shortcomings here. So
And that's the beauty of the idea when you look at money and trying to do money with somebody else. It's like it is yours, mine, and ours. Like, even though I carry a lot of baggage, I also carry a lot of wisdom and a lot of perspective from the experiences I had in my life. I don't lose all of those just because there were some bad things that happened too.
I was able to
Mhm.
help Heather navigate that component, not just with words, but with actions. And we talk about that in the book. But Heather, back over to me too. My parents ended up getting divorced, 6 years ago as an adult. And she said, "Hey, I went through this, at a very tender moment in my life, arguably brutal timing for Heather relative to me. It all stinks." But she was very good at saying, "Here's what I've learned here. And here's what you can take to help navigate this for yourself." So again, being opposites is great, but when it comes to money and your partner, it's not a bad thing that you have different stories and different upbringings, culture, religion, whatever it may be that has created your own money story. Yes, I think 9 out of 10 times you'll find that you are different. But in those differences is the opportunity to connect, which is what this book is about, right? How do you connect? How do you reconcile these differences so you can have that chosen family with its own chosen values to move forward in life? And that's the work that we want people to do because it leads to happiness.
Yeah. There's so many things that you've already said that are very similar to us because Brandon's
Yeah.
parents got divorced when he was 5. My parents got divorced when I was 28. So after
Oh, wow.
There you
35
go.
years of
Yeah,
marriage.
right when we first started dating.
So I had to like unpack a lot of that
Yeah.
because obviously your view of divorce when you're 5 is very different than when you're a grown adult with a
Yeah.
whole life.
Yeah.
And I mean, we take those into our relationship. So I went to a lot of therapy after that for
Good.
a variety of reasons,
That's
but I do
good.
think that's partially and or maybe in large part to the success of our relationship is like I worked all that out before bringing it into this.
I
So,
think there's also a difference, like you said, that you guys had met in college. So ironically, we actually went to the same college. However, we didn't know each other in college. So
mm,
we didn't start dating. I was 30 years old and 28 when we started dating, actually. So that
yeah.
makes a big dynamic, difference in regards to we kind of had already become quote unquote adults and already
Yeah.
lived certain aspects of our life separately as compared to obviously you guys, went from like essentially,
It's
children to two adults together.
Yeah.
We grew up together is the best
Mhm.
way I put it, and that we really were able to have a front row seat to working through some of these challenges. And I say this all the time that it's not that he shaped the outcomes. It's not that he did help in many ways, but I think that it's important in our lives for the perspective that he's gained because I think that does give us a leg up in many ways. That's what people have a hard time talking about. We know the facts about our partners, but do you really know the stories? Do you know how it
Mm,
made people feel? Do you know the impact it might have on their life today? Unless you're having these deeper conversations, you might not understand why your partner behaves a certain way today. So like the fact that
mhm.
it is a bit of a cheat code that we've known each other so long. But to be clear, it wasn't sunshine and rainbows. Like going from children to adults, like there was more than one occasion where it was all out on the line and we almost did not survive.
Yeah.
So like I try and make that point clear. This is not some college sweethearts and it was all sunshine and rainbows. We worked really hard to become adults and start our adult lives
Yeah,
together.
two things can be
Mm.
true. You know, you can have an advantage by understanding and having perspective of one another from those earlier years that you bring into your adult years, and struggle and find yourself in positions that you have to work hard on to prove your relationship to be durable for the long term. So
Mhm.
I like the way Heather said that a lot. And, you know,
Thanks.
but we talk a lot, yeah. But we also talk a lot about, you know, just when you think you figure it out. You know, there's been moments in our journey together where we thought we had it all licked, right? We cool, had a kid, bought a house, we did it. I mean, life's not linear like that. You go through these seasons of life and find that there are challenges ahead of you, and we did, and that's ultimately what brought us to what we're
Mhm.
doing right now and the work that we have. We thought we had it figured out, and then we didn't, and we had to find ourselves back to center, writing a book, working together, and, you know, never leaving each other's side 24 hours a week, yeah, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. No, no, no. There's a lot to it, right? But it's through that journey and it's through experiencing that kind of growth that you're able to get through these seasons and start out on a new one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always amazed by people who met at such a young age and had to go through all those different periods of figuring out who you are as an individual, figuring out who you are as a couple, and growing up together. Because I think it's significantly easier to come together as quote unquote full grown adults, where you already know who you are, rather than like because sometimes you see people that are together and they just end up growing apart. It's not a matter of anything either one of them did. It's just a matter of that's just how they evolved as people.
There were times in those years, especially in those early years, where it was incredibly. I wish I was clearer at the time. I did not. I made a ton of mistakes in our early 20s, and he stayed in Florida, and I moved to New York to go to law school. And I don't know if I don't know if whether we would have survived had we not given each other the space that we needed to grow up a little bit,
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
we weren't at the same place at the same time. We weren't in lockstep. We weren't in agreement about how we wanted our adult lives to play out, where we wanted them to play out, what we were going to do. We definitely had to grow up as individuals and then figure out several years later, hey, this is the real deal. This is for the long term. We want to start our adult lives together, and we're going to do that.
The
I think that's an important. I'm with you 100%. And
yeah.
I think some people are lying to themselves when they
Mm.
don't admit that.
Well, I think human beings in general would like to avoid discomfort almost at all costs. We live in a world where obtaining comfort is easier than ever before, right? We don't have
Mhm.
to do a whole history lesson to understand. You don't have to go too far back in time to find out how miserable life could be.
Right.
And we live in a very comfortable environment. The point I'm trying to make here is that if you want to experience growth, in any part of your life, whether it's your physique or your relationship with your partner, guess what you got to do? You got to get uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And that will happen. That's the thing that you can rely on being consistent if you want to get through seasons of life, whether you're puppy dogs and love in college or you're navigating parenthood or retirement later on, whatever it may be. How uncomfortable are you willing to get with your partner? Hopefully, you don't
Mm.
take it to a point where the wheels are about to come off and you get good at this. But I think that is just such a critical point as you're doing this type of work or any type of work that is about self care or growth or just improvement.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
great
it's a
call
I
out.
have one question for Heather because
Oh.
I did I did a year of law school and I distinctly remember after doing my 1L year I was like this is not for me, but I distinctly remember at the beginning when they were giving orientation that they said if you are in a relationship right now with someone who's not also in law school, good luck. Did they give you that talk?
No one gave me that talk, but it is true.
I distinctly
It is
remember
true.
that.
Doug,
Yeah.
it was by far the worst time for the two of us. By far the worst time. And when I say like we really almost didn't make it. Everyone I know that went in a relationship either like took a break, broke up, didn't work out, and then they all and the few that figured it out like long after the dust had settled from graduation. Like it was truly the most pressure cooker, um, insular experience. I also was in law school during the Great Recession. So, like, there was no any positive vibes were gone. Like there was no abundance. It was like a true like cage match for like the three jobs that were going to be available to anyone.
Mm.
It was
Yeah.
toxic.
Those-
And
And
I don't
yeah.
use that word lightly. Like my experience in law school, like I'll tell you, like, and I had someone de-tag my law school in a post with my name in it. Like, and I that's how that's when I look back and I'm like, man.
I think what was happening in the world at the time of what's happening in your life in Heather's case is just one of those compound fractures that make it that much more difficult to recover from. And I feel a lot of folks in our generation who started out their lives in 2008 and 9 and 10 as someone who primarily works with these folks as clients, you see the scar tissue,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
There was a lot of shame to go
Yeah.
around, not just for
Yeah.
me, for a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
people I was in school with, because we made the decision to attend. And I went to law school in New York City, an expensive law
Yeah.
school. I took out student loans, 6 figures,
Oh,
to attend that law school, and it was not a willy-nilly decision. I sat there in the financial aid office. I looked at the employment charts. It was a bet that was calculated. It made sense. It was an investment in myself, and then it went belly up while I
they
was
changed the
there.
rules of the
They
game in
changed
the
the
middle
rules of the game in the middle of the game.
So
And
Yeah.
and and I don't say that to place blame, but so that people understand the kind of shame that sets in and you experience causes you to do all sorts of crazy things. Like
Mhm.
and it took like and your decision making ability is so clouded. It took me years to unpack that after law school. It took years for me to feel comfortable with money again, or to believe that I even deserve to make financial decisions, honestly.
Mm.
I also feel that age, call it 20, mid to late 20s, is like adolescence 2.0.
Totally.
I guess your body's not changing as much as maybe adolescence 1.0. But you're in a really interesting spot in your life where, you believe you're an adult and you're really not. Go talk to a,
Mhm.
50 something year old. They're looking at you like a child. And I think it's just for me, I'll speak from my own personal experience. It was just a very hard time to navigate. Wanting things to work out so badly in my own relationship, having to leave Florida to get to New York to see that through, put a lot of risk out there, put it really all on the line, and just kind of feel like I'm doing I'm taking all this risk. And, the people younger than me, I know I'm not a kid like them, but yet I'm looking at these folks.
A lot of 20 something year olds still feel like that today. I mean, God, I feel like I end up
Yeah, that
giving
was
unsolicited advice
Yeah,
to
that wasn't privy to us in our mid to late. I think that's any mid to late 20
that
year old. That's a good.
crisis is real. I really feel for
Mhm.
them. I
I
do.
hated it. I hated that time. I really, really did. I could tell you throughout, other than maybe actual puberty in middle school, like that.
It's a
That
hard
definitely
time
is. Yeah,
because
it's
you're
a
like
tough, tough time.
you thought you were gonna have it figured out, and then you realize you don't have it figured
Oh my
out,
god.
but you
Oh
Like
yes.
are now responsible for your
oh, it's all
things
on
and
you.
your
It's all on
bills,
you.
and
Yeah.
yeah,
I
it's
I
hard.
think I think also generationally speaking, I presume we're all kind of in the same
Mhm.
age cohort here, that the millennials grew up kind of being told by our parents, you put one foot in front of the other, you do this, you'll get this, you do that, you do that. Doing a good job mattered.
And you'll be
Yeah.
Working
just
hard mattered.
fine.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Having integrity matters. Get
Yeah.
the degree, it'll all work out. Do the things you're told, and you'll continue to get your trophies for doing them, whatever those trophies, whatever form they take. And I think that we realized that the rules were changing, and
Yeah.
that a lot of the advice we were given was NA, no longer applicable to us. And
Maybe a different time.
we had to figure that out on our own. And I really, I mean, in the same way, that's why we ourselves have a lot of sympathy for Gen Z and
Mhm.
growing up, coming of age in the age of AI and everything,
Yeah, I
and,
think
and
it's
what an entry level job is going to look
I
like
think
for
it's even harder for them
we.
without the appreciation of a non digital world. Like we're the
Yeah.
last of the group to live in that space, which I think is a little bit of a superpower. But that's a conversation for another time.
Well, I think it's interesting though, because I did want to touch on the fact that you did end up becoming like that corporate girly. You got the law degree. Obviously, it put a large strain on your relationship. And correct me if I'm wrong in any of these details, but at one point, you were the breadwinner in your relationship, and
Yes.
you were basically making sure that everything stays afloat. So, Douglas, you could go on this entrepreneurial journey, which again
Yeah.
is very aligned with Brandon and I, because I'm the corporate one with the steady income and the insurance that the whole family's on and all the things, so that, these men that we love can go and do what they love because they don't like authority and they don't want to work for anybody except themselves. So walk us through that, because I know that that's a component of the book as well, because there's a lot of pressure in being the breadwinner regardless of who you are, but I think there's that added notch that gets turned when you're the female breadwinner and you're really helping your partner get whatever they're working off the ground.
Yeah. It was an interesting time for us when I had settled into a corporate legal role, and kind of chose that path in commercial insurance. I was in private practice, different law firms for a couple years, and I really hated it. So it was worth kind of making this move from a stability standpoint, because when you like really when you really dislike your job, it's like every day feels
Mm,
like you don't really know what the next day is going to bring. But also, like we knew that this was sustainable, the hours were predictable, but it was also going to give us the stability of him knowing I was set in doing this. This was a job
mhm,
I could have done for a long time, and I did. And what that gave Doug was the ability to take the risks, to start the firm eventually, and really flourish without the fear that we wouldn't have health benefits, the fear that we could afford. There's no ceiling and there's no floor when you're an entrepreneur.
mhm,
So I think it cuts both ways. But in terms of the pressure that um, I felt it, but I think also, like, he is so assured. Again, this goes back to like childhood.
mhm,
He comes from this long line of entrepreneurs, and I've watched him bootstrap and use the tools at his disposal to build forever. And so I was very confident that he would be able to do that. And he did. And it was working. I mean, it's a great problem to have that it worked out so well that I went from the breadwinner to being in a relationship where my husband was earning 3 times my salary in just a short period of time.
mhm.
How that dynamic played out, I mean, it just so happens, and this is like a whole related thing that I think many couples find themselves experiencing, is that it was also the years that that I had our children.
Yeah.
And I call them the Bermuda Triangle of my career, because I really, we thought I was stable. Again, you go back to this thing, it's lockstep, you keep
Yeah.
moving up and up, but then, like, you go to have children and you start to experience some of the hurdles and the systemic things that face women in the workplace who are
Mhm,
young mothers. And I think a lot of the messages that I had told myself about what my place was, not only in our relationship, but in the workplace, and what my identity was as a mother and a lawyer, really got called into question. And that was really like the start of a major dynamic shift in our relationship. You want to say something?
Yeah, one
He's like itching. He like, let me
Itching to
get in
say
there.
something about
um now I gotta figure out what it was. I think that, you know, as much as we set out and knew that the stability that Heather was providing was to feed the risk that I was taking to build what we now have today, even though we knew the goal was to out earn Heather, that wasn't, that was by design. What you don't know is what's going to happen when you get there. And back to this thing about you think you have it figured out. This is really the moment in which, all these things kind of happen at once. Now you're in a new season and you have no idea and then those feelings come rushing in. And Heather
Mhm,
was very good at being, because she's a deep person, was very capable of identifying them and seeing what would happen if they were left unchecked, to
mm,
then come to me and say, "Hey, Doug." And I'd be like, "What? Everything's great." No, it's not working here. And then I love you enough to say, well, if it's not working for you, we got to figure out how to get this thing right, because the last thing we need to deal with is, and I do not blame her for feeling resentment over the fact that I'm over here continuing to grow and live out this dream, and she's plateauing in her own career. And Heather is not someone who wants to throttle her ambition.
Well, so if you couldn't tell, because I wrote a book on our first maternity leave, the type of person that I am, that I don't know how to sit still. I'm
Yeah.
motivated AF. I always have been
She can't
to a
sit still
fault.
either.
I can't
Yeah.
nap.
Fault, can't rest, can't stop moving. And I had taken this corporate job and kind of built this security blanket for our family because it made sense. It was sustainable. It was kind of like me taking that defensive role for us, right? Like it was like so that
Mhm.
he could run. But and it made sense. And so this is a very important concept in our book, not just about like the dynamics that are constantly changing and the fluidity that comes with life because it made sense, but that was always with the unspoken, which was, I think, where we probably messed up for too long, the unspoken truth that there would come a time when I wanted the chance to run again. I wanted the chance to swing for the
What's that?
fences again. And when would that time come? Because in the years of early parenthood, especially for mothers, a lot ends up falling on your shoulders and you can really, really
Yeah.
get lost in it. And,
Mhm.
and,
That
and, you
identity
know,
crisis that you go through, I think.
yep,
Especially
yep.
you went from being the breadwinner to having your first child, and then, Douglas, your practice took off, and then it's like all these things are now shifting for you, Heather, right? Because 'Cause you're a whole new person, the hormones are crazy, you're sleep deprived, you're not the breadwinner anymore, and your career has kind of stagnated, so there's a lot going on for you.
And COVID.
Don't
Oh,
forget a pandemic
A global pandemic and a
and a
second
second
child
child in
who
there
was
as
born
well.
We had two
this
under two.
time. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it just gets to an overload point, and
yeah,
the dam's gonna burst if you're not
absolutely.
careful enough.
As we talk about it is because it's like, yeah, it was unexpected. And but that's what this is all about. Like a decision that we made years ago when we agreed I was going to stop going for the highest earning job at a private law firm. I was going to take this stable corporate job
Yeah,
so that he could go out and do all these things. That decision made a ton of sense at the time. And it came from an amazing place. And it came from this collective idea of ambition like my win is your win is my win, which we still believe is like the way that couples should be viewing their
Yeah.
careers and their
yeah,
lives.
Mhm.
However, that only works when you acknowledge that us investing in him is inherently me making sacrifices.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that there is going to come a time where that coin you got to flip it over. If that matters
Mhm.
to your partner, you've got to be willing to flip that coin when they say, "Hey, it's time. It feels like it's time for me again." And I think that we were missing that nuance. And like life comes at you like there was never any ill will or there was never any like nefarious decision to like keep me down. Like
yeah.
life happens to people.
Yeah.
Like omissions can be just as damaging to your relationship as conscious decisions.
I want to pick up
Mm.
on that for a second, and that's you know whether it's the work you're doing to improve your relationship stemming from our book or other sources, or just your desire to live a better life with your partner. I think that you know the difficulty factor is always pretty high, and we're not asking people to be so good at this practice, and this all is a practice, that you can avoid everything that life will have to throw at you. First of all, that would spoil all the amazing things you'll discover on your own life's journey. But we just want you to be in a position to be proactive enough so you don't sink your ship, that you don't
Mhm.
put damage to your relationship, your health, your body, whatever it is that you're trying to be
Totally.
proactive for. So, have some grace and take some of this with a little bit of, space to allow yourself to step into those uncomfortable situations, but hopefully feel confident enough that you can navigate that. You can have that conversation like Heather was able to have with me at that
Mhm.
critical moment.
Well, I was gonna say that's the thing that you either get right or you completely gloss over it and then you go another year and another year
It'll be back to haunt you.
and it will come back and it will cause an explosion, right? So I think there's something
100%.
really, really important and special in the relationships where you can say, I'm overwhelmed. This is how I'm feeling. Hey, when is it going to be my turn again? Like, whatever that is, and it's going to change over time depending on your seasons of life. But I think being able to say that to your partner, and then Douglas, what you said, I loved her enough to hear what she said, and then we pivoted, right? So I know we can go into those stories in detail and we could have another 20-hour conversation. And I love that in the book, you spoke to dozens of couples. This is not just your point of view. You actually were interviewing couples about all different situations. But the one thing that it always comes back to, and I really love because it aligns with our dream framework for couples to have better money conversations. It all comes back to the stories, right? Heather, you said it's not about the money, it's not about the numbers, it's about the stories. Where did it start? What is your money mindset, right? And I think you can learn so much from your partner when you really go back to those first money memories, what you remember about money, and all of those things that really shape who we are. And so
That's right.
I know that you
Yeah.
made the pivot into bona fide wealth. So now you're a true partnership in love, in life, in business. I mean, that's like a lot of togetherness.
All the things.
We're
All the
very so
things.
we're
We're
ve-
very together.
we're
We're
very
very
aware,
together with Douglas and Heather. Yes, we're very
Yes. Oh my
together.
gosh, I love that.
self-aware, very self-aware of how this is not for everyone. We know, we
Yeah.
know.
Well, but I want to get into where this book came from, because you guys, you're doing all the things, you're parenting, you have a thriving business, you have a wonderful newsletter. You could have just stopped there, but you needed to write another book. So where did
Definitely could
Money
have said that.
Together and the importance of that, like where did that fire come from, and why did you have this story to share now?
It came from the humbling experience that if we, a financial professional of 20 years, someone who is educated, motivated, engaged, could find themselves in the place that we did, what's everybody else doing? Couple that with the fact that Douglas sits across the table every week from many, many couples, and he has for many years, who are not having the right conversations about money. It is clear that there's more going on when couples find themselves in conflict. And we've observed that over time, and even in your own life, in your peer circles, in our own life, um, that there was more going on underneath the surface. And, we wanted to know what that looked like. And
Mm.
so when we embarked upon the journey of this book, we didn't have all this figured out. This was truly a project and an exercise from day one. I want to understand what's really going on
Right.
beneath these surface level, these proximate week to week bickering arguments that you hear your friends talk about. Oh, so and so says I should spend less.
Yeah.
Oh, we were arguing about where we go on
Yeah.
vacation in the springtime, whatever.
It's all surface level.
It was all surface level. There's obviously a lot more going on because I lived it. And I know how hard it was for me to find the words to articulate the way that I felt. And I wanted to create something that, one, make both partners feel seen in ways they've never felt seen before. Two, create some conversation openers for couples to have deeper conversations. Look, we would never put ourselves out there as saying, here's the 10 steps that you need to take, and you take them once
To
and
be
done.
happy forever.
And you're going to be happy forever. Just
Right.
buy my guide and it's all going to be fine.
If
Yeah.
only it was
That
that
was
easy.
not, that was not what we set out to do. We want to help couples have greater empathy for one another, greater curiosity for respect, perspective for the joys and abundance that they already have in their life, and just be able to navigate uncertainty as a team. And yeah, money has a huge component of all of that,
Yeah.
right?
If like health, money, like these are things like you don't have to care about them, but they care about you, right? And I think that we don't get to opt out, of money in our lives. And because of that, we're just forced with having to wrestle with this. Why not provide, some good guidance and some great conversation starters and stories to share with people to get there?
Well, and I'll just throw one
Mhm.
more thing in. Sorry, this is like one of those questions. I'm like, well, there's 4 million reasons why we wrote this book. Um, I, I think it was really important to me for the equity and fairness component to be brought into financial conversations more. I think the industry needs it. I think individuals need it. And this notion that time is a currency you must solve for in your relationship. It is not just the income coming into your household.
Mhm.
It's time. And who has the time to pursue their career? Who has the time to pursue their individual interests and things that also support the family and how we view what it means to contribute. And I wanted to offer thought leadership that moved us in a better direction that helps women advance in the world because I think a lot of that begins at home.
Preach.
From all the, various couples that you had interviewed for this book, did you ever come across interviewing a couple where you just saw, like, from your perspective, like, hey, you guys are not on the same page, and I don't think you're ever going to get there?
Yes.
Yeah. Whether it was appropriate in the interview to get, like, the interviews weren't to give advice.
Yeah.
The interviews were to gain stories.
Yeah.
Had they been clients or seeking out advice from us, that may have been a different story. But there were multiple occasions where we saw some real struggles. We saw sometimes some bad behaviors, and whether they made it in the book or not, and hit the chopping,
I'll get racy with it.
Yeah, Heather
There
could
were
tell you.
there were a couple times I felt that the power dynamic was really,
Yeah.
really off.
Mm.
There
Like
were situations
awkwardly off? Like where you're like, I'm
awkwardly off,
uncomfortable?
Uncomfortably off, yeah.
Oh,
uncomfortably
yeah.
off. And what bothered me the most and what actually inspired the chapter about religion in the
Mm.
book was that I did not like when I felt a man was exhibiting financially controlling behavior, was making mistakes, was running a million miles a minute, and just was like, well, brought faith into that part of the conversation in a really disingenuous way. That's the best way I can say
Yeah.
it. I know this is like a little
Like
racy to
using
say.
religion as an excuse to make
As
bad
the shield, yeah, as
decisions?
That's
the
right.
shield to be
Mm.
to not be challenged on the things that they were doing by tying it to something that should not be challenged, right? You can't go
Mm.
there.
Right. Like, yes, I did these four things and I bankrupted my family two times, but we believe there's in faith and a higher, purpose and a higher being, and I was supposed to do those things, and that's why I did
All
them.
according to
But there was no level of personal accountability there.
made those decisions,
Ooh.
right? Like
Ooh.
that was you.
And
Uh,
and that is
yeah.
what caused me to want to write about this hot potato about the difference
Mhm.
between faith and personal responsibility and how you need a combination of both to really
Yeah.
do
Mm.
this.
I 100% understand that because I do, like, to everyone else, your religious beliefs, your faith, whatever that may be. I do feel as though that often as a society, we tend to use religion as a means of not taking accountability
That's
way too
right.
often.
That's right.
It's the proverbial double-edged sword. Like, it either
Mm.
absolutely helps you take responsibility and find, greater meaning, or it's the cope or excuse.
The truth is, no matter what your faith is, how you practice it matters, right? You
Yes.
still have to swim. And that's what
Mhm.
we keep saying. It's yes, yes, and it
Yeah.
cannot you should not be, like you said, hiding behind it as an excuse for the behaviors that you've done or that didn't work out your way, it felt in many of these instances like
Yeah.
it also created a dynamic where their wife could not question the decisions that was being made. I really didn't like that either.
It wasn't a
Mm-mm.
conversation starter or opener. It was very much to close down the
Mhm.
line of communication. And whether it's religion or anything else that causes that effect, not
It's
not
never
usually
positive, and it's
not a
not
good,
gonna
yeah,
move
not gonna
you.
lead to good outcomes.
No,
No.
no, it's
Usually
not.
99% of the time.
No,
No.
it's not. There's a line in the book, it's one of my favorites, and it's, "Love, not money, build the legacy you want, and money isn't a team game you win once, you have to play it forever." If you aside from people needing to buy your book to have better relationships with each other and with their money, what would you leave our audience with? And I know it's a lot of that conversation and communication, but if they got anything out of your book, what would it be?
Build a practice around this. It's not a one and done ever, and if you do it too infrequently, you're never going to get to the result that you want. Build a practice around the type of conversations, reviews. We call them money dates. You can call them whatever you want. There is a formal setting in which Heather and I sit down, not just to go over numbers. As a matter of fact, It's probably the worst place to start. So you get in with your goals, you do it at a time and a place that works for everyone, activities you love to do. Start with your wins, not with your losses, and then do this every quarter, every however often, probably not too soon to where you don't see any meaningful change and not so long apart that you actually don't build any consistency. Figure that out. Do this for years, years, and you will find that you have a rhythm, you have a cadence, you have a a forum in which to really get there with your partner, not just about what you spent your money on, but where you want to go and the risks you're willing to take.
I'll
Mhm.
be a little less prescriptive with mine.
Okay.
Um, I I I don't. I want everyone to realize that they are still their own person and they deserve to be seen for all of what that means. When we talk about fairness, we talk about making room for your spouse every day. And so I just want to leave people with the idea that they should always feel empathy for their spouse. They should always be curious about them. They should always want to know how they're feeling. They should always want to know what they want in life and whether they feel like they're getting it. And if not, what can we do to make more room for you? Because a great relationship is yours, mine, and ours. It's not just one conglomerate mush ball of the two of us. It's who we are as individuals and the power that we have when we come together. That's where I would leave people.
Absolutely love that. Where can people find you, Heather and Doug, as a team and as individuals?
Sure. So if you're interested in learning more about Money Together, you can go to domoneytogether.com for anything having to do with our firm. That is bonafidewealth.com. And of course, do not forget to subscribe, that works, to our weekly newsletter on love and money. That is the joint account at Read, the joint account.
Wow.
Wow, Doug.
Read the
It's a Monday, guys. It's a Monday.
There we
Read
go. There we go.
thejointaccount.com.
And
Love
as
it.
and as individuals, I'm really fun on Instagram. I
Yes, you
have to
are.
say, Average Joelle. That's my middle name.
You're
Yeah.
so far from average, but it's a
Yeah.
cute name.
Thank you. And he's Doug Bonaparte everywhere on social.
Come get a laugh.
Come get a laugh from
Come
Doug.
get a laugh. Thank you guys so much for being with us, for sharing your story. And this beautiful book, which we discussed at the very beginning, matches my outfit, matches my office. Great
beautiful.
color scheme.
Color scheme.
Wow, we are all struggling today. This has just been too much fun. We can't even
Coffee
talk.
time.
I know. Thank you guys for being with us. Congratulations on the book. Much success. And the next time our double date needs to be in a restaurant and not on a podcast. How about that?
100%. It's a date.
Perfect. We can't wait. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sugar Daddy Podcast, yo. Learn how to make them pockets grow. Financial freedom's where we go. Smart investments, money.